Look, I'm a big believer that the meaning to life is the people you meet and what you create with them. Traditionally, I meet a lot of people around business, but it was great that we forged a friendship and a relationship outside of business, and business was a byproduct of it.
Andrew Morello has coached over 15,000 business owners. He's a winner of the Apprentice TV show, co-owner of Yellow Brick Road, auctioneer with over 1,000 properties under his belt, successful investor, and head of business development at The Entourage. Today, he reveals exactly what he looks for in businesses that he backs as a commercial property owner. Because as investors, we know tenants are the lifeblood of our properties. And Morello spent his career learning what makes businesses thrive or fail.
John McGrath runs an event every year that I've spoken at twice called ARIC, which is the Australian Real Estate Agents Conference. And somebody asked him once, they're like, isn't it a bit silly of you to share all of your secrets with your competitors? He goes, 99% of the people in this room, I can give you a 10-point checklist of how to go and build a $100 million business. And he goes, 95% won't even try because you're too lazy or you don't have the discipline. There's another 2.5% might have a crack. There's probably 1% of you in the room that will take everything that we discuss over the next 3 days and actually implement it. And if you do, you're going to build a $100 million business.
In this episode, you'll learn how to vet and choose businesses that are more likely to succeed as tenants, the signals he looks for before backing an operator, and what commercial property owners can actually do to support long-term business success in their spaces. If you want to build a portfolio that not only collects rent, but partners with thriving businesses, this episode will give you the playbook. Andrew Morello is a close friend of mine for over 10 years, business mentor, and just an all-round top bloke. Let's bring him in and have a chat. Andrew Morello, thank you for joining me.
Great to be here, Steve.
Yeah, as listeners are probably going to know, long-term
Yes.
friend,
Yes.
business coach,
Yes.
mentor, property investor, auctioneer. But do you want to maybe just give us a bit of a background?
All-round troublemaker.
All around, yeah. We've had a lot of adventures off of our
We have indeed. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summation. Let's
start off how we met.
Okay, yeah, we met definitely. So it was a dark and stormy night in the back streets of Sydney at 2:00 in the morning, and I'm pretty sure I told you that I was going to go do the Kokoda Trail.
Yeah.
And in a bit of drunken stupor, we both agreed you should come. And I actually thought it was all going to be just some talk, and then literally the next day, you told me I've signed up, I've paid, and I'm coming to Kokoda. And we decided to go then trek through the mountains of Papua New Guinea and do the Kokoda Trail. So 10 days alone in the jungle, cradling each other in tents. No, we had our own tents, guys. Don't worry. But
I can hear you snoring though.
You could. Yeah. But it was a great way. Look, I'm a big believer that the meaning to life is the people you meet and what you create with them, right? So like traditionally, I meet a lot of people around business. But it was great that we forged a friendship and a relationship outside of business, and business was a byproduct of it. And even now, like some of the best advice I give people is like, I try not to do business with people I can't be friends with. So like, unless I can go and have a beer with you or go share a meal or go to the Kokoda Trail 10 days with each other, like 10 days straight. Like, unless I can do that, I kind of go, life's too short these days.
It's not worth the money.
No,
like if you had the
not.
choice, if someone said you can have $100,000 or you can spend a week enjoying yourself, you're going to choose a week enjoying yourself.
Yeah, correct. And I think more and more, and that's probably a really good point too, more and more people are willing to forego sometimes monetary benefit for lifestyle, family. My brother's a prime example, extremely successful in the property and real estate sector down in Melbourne, a company called Jealous Craig, for those who aren't from Melbourne, and recently had some health issues. And I suppose it's just been a reminder for him that the priority needs to be his health and spending time with his family. And so, but generally as human beings, it takes us something bad to happen to wake us up.
or to someone you know, and so that's fine. But you're I'm going to blow smoke up your ass here. You're one of the few people I know who's really hardworking in business, but then you also live life hard as well.
I do indeed.
You've done quite a lot of adventures.
I don't know if it's a compliment or not, but maybe it's a backhanded compliment.
There's pros and cons to everything. Like you've done Burning Man, and then when I met you, I was just like, this guy's the coolest guy in the world. I'm like, how are you managing both? And that's kind of where we formed the friendship and / mentorship, and now formal mentorship as well. But do you want to give listeners a bit of a background for you, because you actually came from real estate as well?
Yes. So
actually, we'll start off with the TV show The Apprentice.
Well, I'll even go before then, because interestingly enough, I actually recently caught up with the lady who gave me my first ever grant to start my first business when I was 14 years old. So I actually ran like youth events in the Moonee Valley Council, which that business actually formulated into quite a substantial business with my cousin Anthony down in Melbourne. And when I was in Melbourne recently, I caught up with the lady who believed in me. Like I asked my dad to give me 10 grand to start the business. He said no.
He said go and find it, didn't he?
He said go and find it, which was good parenting, right? It forced me. And then I was like, who's going to give me 10 grand? And my mate goes, oh, the council gives grants. And I'm like, what do you mean they're not going to give a 14-year-old money? And they're like, they will actually, if you got a good idea. And I remember I did a business plan in grey lead, grey lead in an exercise book. And I did a little 2-page business plan. I showed my dad. He's like, it's pretty good actually. I said, will you give me the money? No way. Go and find it. So I did that.
Your dad was a business owner as well. He ran a petrol
station. Yeah. So I was, at the time when you're a kid, you probably don't appreciate earning your stripes in your father's service station and pumping petrol at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, when everyone else during school holidays was at Queen's Park Falls or, kissing girls behind the bloody, the tree or something like that.
I'm sure you're doing that as well.
I did some of that at some point. But the problem was I didn't appreciate it at that point. And obviously when I got older and I had the work ethic, and then, I had this idea to run, underage nightclubs. My dad, I had good parenting like that. And if there's any parents watching, I think it's really, really important to understand, that you've got a child. I've got a son, and I think it's really important between 0 and 7, kids learn their barometer for 3 things: love, fear, and hate. Right. So I was very, very lucky that I saw my parents very loving towards each other. My dad, even though he was old school Sicilian, never really raised his voice to my mum. So I always knew that you treat a woman with respect. Like he'd give me, a bit of a look, but I probably deserved it every now and then. And then, so that was love, fear. I had parents that always said, they wouldn't give me something, but they'd always say, go out and give it a go, right? And it was even when I decided I wasn't going to go to university, my brother and sister had been to uni. I said, I'm not going to go to university, I'm going to go do real estate. And my dad's like, well, go out and give it a crack. He goes, the worst case scenario, and he used to make a joke about it, but I think there's some validity in the joke. He used to go, there's always going to be a warm bed and a bowl of pasta waiting for you at home. And so even though he might have written out a check, like I've seen, other guys that I've grown up with, their parents do that, or fund them into a business, or fund their lifestyle while they study and stuff. My dad said, I'm not going to do that, but he goes, I will give you unconditional love and support. So that way, and that was, so my barometer for fear was very low. And then obviously from a hate point of view, my father, had multiple service stations. He hired Muslims, Jews, Jehovah's Witness, the lunch rooms at my dad's service stations were like United Nations. And it was great. Everyone would share food, traditional food that, maybe somebody would never get a chance to try. An Aussie mechanic that worked for us eating Afghani food, right? He would never have tried it unless he was in there. So, so I suppose my mum, who sadly passed, but my father, who's still alive, were very wise to sort of foster an environment and bring me into the business. And I learnt via osmosis. So I could have finished uni and got under a business degree, but I literally earned my and that sort of segues into the Apprentice. When I was on The Apprentice with Mark Burris, there's a famous line, which I've now found on YouTube, by the way. I'll have to give it to you. Maybe you can drop it into this section where he goes, Mr. Burris, I don't have a degree or an MBA or a doctorate or a master's in bachelor in law or whatever, which the other competitors did have. And I said, I'm just, a simple boy from Mooney Ponds. And then he turns around and he says, Morello, you've got a degree. Morello, you've got a doctorate. You've got a master's. And I'm like, I think he's reading the wrong script here. And he goes, from the back streets of Mooney Ponds. And I was like, I had like this tear in my eye. And I watched it recently. I found it on YouTube and I watched it. And it was like a very beautiful thing because I think I was lucky enough to have that, and that's what put me in good stead.
I want to take a step back to running the underage nightclubs effectively. Yes. What was because with commercial investing, I always say work out the why, because it's like you can invest all you want, but unless you're using the money for something, there's got to be a bigger purpose.
Yes.
The love of money can be a reason, like growing wealth. But back then, do you think it was an acceptance of friends trying to fit in, or is it just the rub off of your dad of business, or is it the actual the lucrative nature of like, oh, I want to earn money? Because you told me the times you got cash in your hand.
It was a cash business, right? And because
no 14-year-old does that. Have you reflected and been like, what was the driver for that?
Look, I feel like and it's a really good question because subconsciously, and I've worked with a high performance psychologist over the years, and I've had this discussion with her too, even around like today and how hard I work now and what am I doing it for and so forth. I looked at my dad working as a mechanic in service stations and having
7 days a week.
7 days a week, and I thought there's got to be an easier way than this, right? Like, it wasn't necessarily easy. Not that I certainly undermine anyone who's in a trade or and does work 6-7 days a week. Like, obviously, it's very noble work that they should be very proud of. So I think it was partly, as much as I've given my dad lots of compliments, I didn't want to end up like my dad. I could see that that's not sustainable, and I see now, like, sadly, as you asked when I arrived, my father's in hospital again because his body, like his brain is perfect, but at 77, his body is given up on him, right? So did I want to go take over service stations, which I'm sure he would have loved for me to do, and I don't think he expected me to become a mechanic, but I think in his mind, in his romantic mind, I think he was expecting that I was going to go run service stations. So, and then to the other thing you said, like it was probably. It was, I'm not going to lie, it's slightly inappropriate. It was a great way to meet girls when you're 14, 15. So, I think I enjoyed the social aspect of it. Funnily enough, I was mates with a lot of like footballers and guys that went on to play AFL because I went to a Victorian school, and it was funny because I used to say to them, the only reason why girls like you is because you can play footy, and they said the only reason why girls like you is because you let them in for free, and I'm like, well, we've both got something to offer. Correct. So but it's interesting. No one's ever asked me that question, Steve. That is a very good question.
I wonder because I've noticed, like, I know your journey, like. You've always made business fun. And I wonder if that was a bit of a catalyst at the start of, because you've made money whilst probably having a hell of a lot of fun with girls and running the nightclubs. Yeah. And you've just transposed that throughout your life in business.
I have. So it's a great assessment that you've made there. So even when they transitioned, after finishing year 12, I still flirted with the nightclub industry, but then I saw the writing on the wall that property was going to be where I was going to make money. So it's funny. Here's a great question. We're getting to the core of it here. So I actually never wanted to be a real estate agent. I wanted to be an auctioneer. I saw that as fun. Getting on the street, calling auctions, that was what turned me on, right? The street theatre. Like, we in Melbourne, we never really did in-room auctions. They've only really just started doing it now. It's very much about Saturday morning, people go from property to property and will watch the same auctioneer if they like him or her. They'll watch them in 4 or 5 auctions. And I used to say to people, like, didn't I just see you at my last 2 auctions? And they're like, yeah, we find you entertaining. Like, you'd see him, they would follow me from auction to auction, right? And so it is really a form of street theatre, especially in Melbourne. And that's why Melbourne per capita is the auction capital of the world for property. Did you know that?
No.
So per capita, we do more auctions than any other major city in the world. We're an auction centric. Yeah, Victoria is, Melbourne is. So I subsequently went to my brother, who was a top performing real estate agent in the industry back then. Back then he was at Rendina Real Estate. Then from Rendina he went to Thompson, then Thompson to Jellis Craig, where now he's one of the head directors and got a big super office and all that jazz. And so I said to my brother, I want to be an auctioneer. Now, I'd done my research and found out at that point that in Sydney, there were people that were only auctioneers, right? Like there were that you could be like
Just an auctioneer.
yeah, Damien Cooley or James Hurley from Under the Hammer. Like there was companies called Under the Hammer or Cooley's Auctions, and they employed people to literally just call auctions. And I said, well, what do they do during the week? They do prep for the auctions, and they train during the week. It's a full-time job, but Saturday's game day, and they can call 10, 11, 12 auctions in a day, like literally 40-minute apart auctions. It's like, and I thought that sounds amazing. I'd love to do that.
One of your biggest benefits is your personality. You've got a likability as soon as you meet you, which is good for auction. You've also got some negatives, like admin. You're terrible at admin.
Terrible.
Like you need people in the office to do just your admin.
No one can see you off screen, but there's admin sitting right next to me. I know. I can't go anywhere on my own. It's hopeless. There we go. But yeah, anyway, my brother goes, look, if you want to do auctions in Melbourne, you got to be a great real estate agent because that's the trick. So anyway, that's how I ended up in real estate.
And then 1,000 auctions later.
1,000 auctions later. We were working it out the other day because I'm redoing some of my accreditations and so forth. We reckon it might even be more than like 1,500 auctions now.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Yeah, and tomorrow night I'm actually calling the charity auction with Katrina Roundtree at the 160th birthday of Arnott's, the biscuit company. So I'm calling the charity auction. The money's all gone to Camp Quality.
You've done hundreds of MC events as well for charities and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So auctioneer, really successful, won the Celebrity Apprentice, then worked with Mark Burris for how many years? That was quite a while as well.
So we did, that's 10 years. Obviously I've still got some financial interests in both Yellow Brick Road head office and also Yellow Brick Road at a franchise level. I own shares in a couple of franchises. And then, look, I literally caught up with Mark, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. We had breakfast together across the road from his office, and he's a great guy that I can still bounce ideas from. Look, I did 10 years full time with him. He probably watched this at some point. He's amazing, but he's also hard work. Like, he's 365 24/7. So it's not abnormal for him to be reading an article on something Sunday morning. He's up at 4:30, 5 o'clock every day. Sunday morning, 6 a.m., you're getting text messages from, have you seen this yet? And it's like, no, I got home an hour ago. I got home an hour ago. Let me sleep for a bit. So it was great. It was fun. It was a beautiful, effectively, pardon the pun, apprenticeship. That was that. It was only supposed to be 1 year, and 10 years later we're still there. Basically with the money that I won through the show and the shares, and him allowing me to take shares in the business, like that's what bought my Bondi place. So you never got to come to that, did you?
No, I did.
No, you did. You came to Bondi. Okay,
We had a big night
so
there.
so he bought that's where that came from. So look, obviously it was quite a lucrative opportunity, but more importantly, the things I learned from Mark were extremely important. And to this day, I can pick up the phone, call him, go catch up with him for a coffee, pick his brain on something. He's always happy to make time. Look, he's very generous with his time with a lot of people, actually. So it's not like I'm extra special, but he always makes a special effort, which is good.
Well, he was your mentor basically for quite a long time. But you're also a successful property investor, and this is sort of where we're going. You're successful business owner, successful investor. Now you work with a company that literally mentors how many 1,000 plus 2,000 plus businesses on how to run their businesses.
We've worked like formally with the entourage with over 10,000 businesses. Since it's coming up to 16 years in February, so it's a long time. I was lucky enough to invest in the entourage about 15 years ago. So while I was still at Yellow Brick Road and Mark Burris, and it's funny, I actually invested in the entourage because when I met Jack DeLosa, we got introduced by a mutual friend. I actually saw him as the next Mark Burris. I saw a lot of personality traits that were very similar. Both, and both of them will admit this, I'm not speaking out of school, both actually naturally quite introverted and quite, to some respects, even partially reclusive. So like when people meet Mark or when they meet Jack, they see these bubbly personalities. What they don't realize, like that comes very natural to me. And then when you're close with people like that, it's not natural for them. Like it's not, and people over the years have probably misconstrued it for arrogance. It's not arrogance. It's that they are actually quite introverted and reclusive. Not in a negative way. They like their alone time.
Probably where they percolate all their ideas.
It is 100%. It is, and so I was lucky enough. I attached my wagon to the Mark Burris show and Yellow Brick Road and did quite well out of that financially. I subsequently invested in property off the back of that, and then I saw an opportunity with Jack, and subsequently have had opportunities to invest more money in the business. We just got paid a dividend, which was great.
Oh, awesome.
They're always good. Always puts a smile on your face, which is good. And so, I just thought, who's the next iteration? But look, can I tell you, when I caught up with Mark a couple of weeks ago, he's just turned 70. And can I tell you, he has no interest in slowing down.
Oh, really?
So when I say like the Jack Delos is the next Mark Boris, I think they're going to be going. They're not in the same industries, but I think they're both going to be giving each other a run for their money.
Do you probably find that with the 10,000 businesses? Like I'm starting to pick it now. Now I've worked with like 2,000 clients. Yep. I can pick the ones that are going to be successful now.
100%.
From the get go. You just see the traits, and it's like it's not nothing or smarts or anything like that. You just look at them like they're relentless. They're gonna keep going. Nothing's gonna stop them.
Yeah.
Whereas the ones that kind of do that half foot in, they're just like, oh yeah, I'll do it for 5 years, then I'll step away and relax, kind of thing. You're like, no, you're not. You got to go full fledged into it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny. Well, I've had this conversation actually with John McGrath, from McGrath's Estate Agents a few times, that the whole concept that talent is overrated, right? Like it's funny. People think, this person's like either really smart or this person's onto something. And I'm like, you can get somebody who's a B grade player, but because they're willing to stick at it longer, or harder, or they're prepared to sell. Like real estate's a really good example of it. I've worked over the years from a coaching capacity, and also, I was a big lister of real estate too. I've worked with guys that were not that switched on and not that smart and didn't ooze natural charisma like a top performing real estate agent does, but they were just prepared to knock on more doors, literally physically knock on more doors, and they were prepared to make more phone calls, and they were prepared to keep going till someone says to them FUCK off. Unless they got it, they didn't even take a no. They just, unless the person said take me off your database and I never want to speak to you again, they would still ring them every 3 months religiously.
One of the biggest kick-off bums I had before I started my buyer's agency, I met probably 5 or 6 other buyer's agents, and I was like, these guys are idiots. But they're relentless.
They're relentless.
And then I'm like, if I can be relentless and hopefully have some academic smarts, that's where I go. And then I've even since like the entourage, I've been in rooms with guys that do 20 plus mil revenue, and they're not academic smart. I had this whole thing in my head of like, the smarter I am at book smarts, the better I'll be in life. No, it's probably the opposite. It's just attitude and relentlessness.
Sure, and look, you've got the same. Pump some wind up you as well. Like I think the key to your success, 2 things for you. I think one, that you have very good work ethic and disciplines. That's number 1. But number 2, I think your humility. And I think that's really important. And I think people resonate with that. Like only recently, I ended up catching up with that guy that came and did your course the other week. Right. I was in Melbourne with him literally like 2 days ago. I didn't even tell you I was going to see him. So I saw him and his wife, and that was all done online, wasn't it? Yeah. Like the way you resonated with him, even through a screen, the way him and his wife spoke about you. And I was like, And I actually said, look, Steve's actually happy for you to call him if you want to have him as just someone you can reach out to every now and then to ask questions. And his wife, Pooja, actually said, why would he do that? Like, aren't we effectively a competitor? I said, because a great leader and a champion in your industry has always got time for other people in the industry. Yeah. You look at Jack, myself, you look at Mark Burris, Jerry Harvey's always happy to.
It feeds each other anyway.
Look at John McGrath. Like, I know not everyone watching this is familiar complete with the real estate industry, but John McGrath runs an event every year that I've spoken at twice called ARIC, which is the Australian Real Estate Agents Conference, and he opens it every year, and he effectively says quasi the same thing every year, because people would go, he's running an event for 4,000 of his competitors, showing them exactly how he's built multi-million-dollar businesses or $100 million plus businesses. And somebody asked him once, they're like, isn't it a bit silly of you to share all of your secrets with your competitors? Yeah. He goes, here's the difference. He goes, 99% of the people in this room, I can give you a 10-point checklist of how to go and build a $100 million business. And he goes, 99% of you won't even try. Yeah. Or maybe 95%, he came up with some statistic like 95% won't even try because you're too lazy or you don't have the discipline and you're not prepared to make the sacrifices to do it. He goes, another 2.5% might have a crack and probably deserve to make it, but maybe, they just don't get there for some reason. And he goes, there's probably 1% of you in the room that will take everything that we discuss over the next 3 days and actually implement it. Yeah. And if you do, you're going to build a $100 million business. And he's right. He's like, and you look around the room and, they have that it's one of the issues, I think, and I've said this to John McGrath, we used to have it at the ICC. So when I spoke the first time, it was at the ICC. And now he has it at the Gold Coast because people like to go to better weather and because they have it earlier in the year during winter and stuff. So it's generally Gold Coast is still good weather. You can tell who takes it seriously or not by who's at the after party.
Yeah.
Right. So the guys that are serious operators, they might go for a dinner, but they're in bed by 8 o'clock, 8:30. They're up at 4 a.m. the next day. They're going for a walk down at what's that beach? Broad Beach. That's where the ICC is. They go for a walk. Like my brother, he was there sending me photos already at 5 a.m. My brother went for a walk and he's a top performer. He was in bed at 8:30, up at 4, went for a walk. Then by the time you walk into Arik, you've had your coffee, you've had some healthy breakfast, your mind's in a good spot and you're ready to take on the day.
I go to about 8:30 now, wake up at 4.
I know you do. I know you do. I know you do. And so but the guys that you see, who John McGrath's talking about, they're actually in the casino till 3 o'clock in the morning. They're getting drunk. They're hitting on their PAs. Yeah. They got wives at home and they're hitting on their PAs. And John McGrath says, that's that kind of a person. This is the John Morellos or the James Tostevins, for example, down in Melbourne, or Alex Phillips. I just watched the great podcast with Alex Phillips this morning. Josh from Hive in Canberra. These guys, they don't drink. They're in the gym at 4:30, 5 o'clock every day. They meditate, they journal. So that's got nothing to do with selling real estate. Yep. But for them to be a top performer, then it feeds back into their talent.
You mentioned my course. So I did a 10-hour course. It cost me $50,000 and everyone said you better charge for it. And I was like, nah, there was 2 aspects of why I didn't charge.
Yep.
First was I'm like, it's going to get
Is this the one that the gentleman went to?
Yeah.
Ish, his name is?
Yeah.
Is that
So
right?
there's 10 hours. It's literally everything you need to know for commercial.
He thought it was amazing.
I thought I'll give it away for free. I'll get the feel good of I'm educating people. But what I actually thought was going to happen is people would finish the course and then improve my competence. So the people that don't have the time will want to work with me.
Yes.
What I actually found in part of the course, I actually see percentage that people have done.
Yes.
And what happened was the people that finished it, only a small percentage of the 13,000, it was literally 10, 15% actually get through it.
Yes.
The rest of them get 20, 30% of the way through and go, Steve knows what he's talking about. I'm just going to pay him to do this for me.
Yeah,
and they actually stop. And that's the types of personalities. So the ones actually doing the hard work, go do it themselves and they're going to be successful. The rest of them kind of get halfway through and go, stuff it. I'm going to go to the club and hit on my PA.
But I want to go back to that for a second. Do you mind if we touch on this? Because I'm also somebody who believes in finding the expert to help me with something, right? As we made a joke before, I'm hopeless with tech and I have to walk around with, a business manager or, I've got a girl in Manila, that I was talking to yesterday. She's sorting all my shit out for me, literally just sorting out my calendar, right? So it's not even it was stuff that I probably could have done. Yeah. So I think, well, there's 2 sides of that. One, it gives you, it reiterates your credibility that people sort of liked you and trusted you 20% of the way through the course, right? So there is that element, number one. Number 2 is Probably if I was making, not probably, it's a fact, if I was making some serious commercial plays, and I do plan to over the next coming years, because like I'm restructuring some of my financials and stuff like that. I'm heavily in residential currently, but I would probably just go, hey bro, can I pay you a fee and you do it, because, and when it's not a laziness thing, it's that you really are an expert at it. On the flip side of that, do I think if you're going to go start a course, should you finish it? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Right? And especially if it is resonating with you, right? So like, I think there is an element of laziness. Like, to give you a bit of an idea, I haven't actually told anyone this, but I am redoing my real estate license. I didn't have to. I was able to, obviously, because I'm looking to potentially set up some sort of a property business. And when I went and spoke to Fair Trading, they're like, oh, because now we've moved, you're originally with the BLA, Business Licensing Australia, in Victoria, then you did a reciprocal into New South Wales. New South Wales has now moved to a Class 1 class. It was all jargon and jarbo. And like I was nearly going to throw my hands up in the air and say, oh, don't worry about it. But then one of my mentors, not in real estate, he goes to me, why don't you just go do the course again? I said, no, I don't need to. I've done over 1,500 transactions. Why should I go do the course again? He goes, because it's probably a good reminder for you. One, because, and when you do the course, it's good. It doesn't teach you any selling skills or people skills or business relationship skills or managing people skills. It's all like legislation and rules and, what you're allowed to say.
I got to do CPD for 5 states of Australia.
There's my point. And so, he said to me, maybe remove your ego for a minute. It was a good reminder for me and go and do it. Like he goes, even if you don't have to do it, even if they'll give you RPL, recognition of prior learning and past experience, he goes, just go and do it. It's 31 modules, and I've been doing it, Lucy knows I've been doing it on Saturdays and Sundays. I've just been sitting in the office looking out to Darling Harbour. It's great motivation, watching the yachts park in and out, and, I'll bring myself some lunch and it's, I've actually been thoroughly enjoying learning again, right? So, yeah. So the flip side of it, one, you should be proud of the fact that obviously you're trustworthy enough after, 20% of it. But you are right. The guys and that Ish guy completed it. Yeah. And as I said, he thought you were the greatest in his life.
Yeah, it's funny. So the social media team, we actually recorded about 20 hours of content, and they're like, Steve, no one is going to watch 20 hours. So we actually cut it to 10. And it made me remember, you probably don't even remember this. So you wrote the testimony for my commercial book. My
I do remember that. Yeah,
You're the first.
It's on my desk.
Yeah, you're the first person I gave my book to. And you probably don't remember what you said. You're like, Steve, your book's bloody heavy. There's a lot. He's like, lighten up a little bit, mate. And I'm just like, I spent 6 years at uni. That's all I know how to write. But funny enough, I actually took that, and now every time we do social media videos and that, I actually don't try to go too deep, too heavy. I try to keep it lighter, because the more people you get to, the more it's digestible. And
it's good, and it's good that you and I think more and more the way that the let's call it the consumer is, whatever it is, whether they're consuming business advice, commercial real estate advice, even education. Like, I think with this new generation, it's all like 7-second bites or something like that, right? I'm like, well, you can't really deliver anything in 7 seconds. But I think more and more we are going to see there's different styles of learning, right? And I think one of the big things that great leaders and great visionaries like yourself and like Jack and like Mark and I part way in that circle as well, is that you got to understand how the consumer consumes now. And one of the concepts we talk about in the Entourage, obviously, is about green braining stuff as well. Like, is there a time for the detail? Yes, there is. But like, most human beings want it in some sort of a green brain, easy to comprehend, bite size, that they can go, okay, I can connect with that, I can resonate with that, and that now I want to make the magic happen.
We all want the carrot at the end. We want the dangling carrot at the end. But the reason we got you on today was because you have coached literally thousands and thousands of businesses. With commercial, we obviously know businesses are what fills a commercial property. So we're going to talk about like tenanted ones and vacant properties. This where we think the industries are going, what are safe businesses, what to look at. So like the people who have listened to this podcast, we always talk about like, check their rental ledgers, make sure they pay on time. And if you can get P&Ls, look at profitable. But there's more to it than that. If you're just looking at a random hairdresser, how do you know if a hairdresser is successful? Like, I imagine the one that's just one sole owner and one worker, way more volatile than one that's got 7 staff because the curve of profit has changed. But do you want to just talk about generally, like, when you first look at a business, like long-term, what do you assess? Short-term, structures, like systems, or just industries that you think might be? And I've thrown a lot of things at you.
So let's start with breaking up and something that you've obviously experienced as part of the entourage. And like, I think what I'll do is tie it back to the what we like to call drive growth and enable growth elements. And so I'll put them all out there first, and then we can sort of deep dive on it. So whenever we're looking at a business and we're doing a due diligence on the business, so the drive growth aspects or elements are obviously, number one is marketing. So like, does this business market? Number two, do they have some sort of a sales process, or what is, how are they going to make sales so they can be successful and pay rent, like at the end of the day?
Just touching back on the marketing one. So we actually do a stalk. Like, we look, if it's a hairdresser, we will stalk their Facebook, Instagram. If that's really, really active and hundreds of Google reviews, you're like, okay, they're on the right foot. They've at least got a springboard for the next step.
And I'd even go one above that. I actually do a bit of a stalk on them. What I'll do is I will try and get their email, and then at least try and reverse engineer some sort of a Google on them and see if they've got a public profile on Facebook as well. Like, I have a public profile, so like anyone can have a look at it. Most people do. Like, I like to just know, is this person a family person? Do they promote their business in their personal life as well? Because I believe you need to turn your job, business, and career into a lifestyle. I will give you one. I'll give you one drawback, and just to be vigilant of from a marketing point of view, though, I have had businesses over the years, and obviously with Yellow Brick Road, we were a franchise model, 135 franchises. I've had potential tenants and tenants that have they look good on paper, and even from a marketing point of view, because it's a franchise business. Like, I literally was speaking. I was speaking as like a NatRad franchise recently. I'll leave the confidentiality out because they're potentially going to be a client. But there was a particular NatRad in a regional area. And like I said, what are you doing in marketing? They're like, nothing. But I've done my research on it, and their marketing looked great because head office does their marketing, right? So it was kind of like, I thought to myself, and then when you start to look at their numbers, they were doing a few $1 million in rev, but practically zero profitability, right? And so that's a red flag. But then obviously they're going to work with us, so that's why they shared their numbers. So sometimes you need to reverse engineer it from there. But so the drive growth enablers, marketing, sales process, and then what I like to call product to market fit. Like, I think at the end of the day, or service, right? Or is the service actually something people need in that shopping center? Like, we talked about it before, when we probably we had good content before. We should have been filming. You were talking about your shopping center, how there's a hairdresser, and like the other tenant that applied directly next door is a nail salon. Now, they're complementary services, right? So there is a product to market fit. They're not bastardizing each other.
Next door public school and kindergarten. So before kid drop off, they're going to go get the nails done, get the hair done. Yeah.
Exactly it, right? So like, it's got that nice flow-on effect, right? So obviously we covered off on drive growth, which is marketing concepts, marketing strategies, sales process, and product to market fit or service, complementary services. And then we've got enable growth. And those enable growth elements are obviously like operations. So like, what systems and processes do they have in place? Even if they're a mum and dad operator, like, they should have some basic stuff, like even like a 1-page marketing plan, or they should have like some sort of an onboarding process. Like, when they bring, like, you look at McDonald's, they're a 10 out of 10. Like, I'm not saying people need to be the next McDonald's, but you should be at least a 5 or 6 out of 10. And I think it's more than okay to ask people, like, do you have an employee handbook or whatever it might be, or do you have an onboarding process or an offboarding process?
A lot of listeners are probably thinking like, how am I going to get that information? But what they don't realize is you talk to the tenant. If you got a tenant, you actually have a conversation with them. You can ask them these questions.
Talk to the tenant. Also as well, number one, talk to the tenant. Number two, it's not hard to find out also where people were before. So what I've actually done over the years is find out where they used to operate a business from, and or if they've even sold that business, go and speak to the people that they have sold the business to.
Yeah,
like, there's no harm in doing that. Like, the worst case scenario, someone's going to tell you
That's good. I've actually never pointed that out. Talk to their previous business.
It's a little bit like the other piece of advice I give people when they're buying a property, and sometimes they're buying a property in a development, right? Yeah. So one of our staff at Entourage in our operations department, amazing woman, and I've been trying to help her. I've been going to auctions and actually bidding for her at auctions and everything, and like. The other week, she didn't quite get it. It was a McGrath's auction too, and I rang John. I said, like, can you help us at all? He goes, mate, it's an auction. Yeah, it's going to sell for whatever it's going to sell for.
Deepest pocket wins.
I said, I know. I said, can you just let him know to look after us as much as possible? He goes, 100%. So he let the agent know that it was a close friend and that I was representing the lady from my office. Interestingly enough, I said to her, like, they're quoting, for the sake of the conversation, quoting like, 1 to 1.1, right? And first home. And I'm like, I go, Kim, this isn't going to go for 1 to 1.1. Yeah. I said, what can you stretch to? And so then she tells me what she can stretch to. And I said, she goes, I don't really want to spend that. I said, well, this week, what I'd like you to do, when you drop your kids off at school and childcare, I want you to actually drive down there and just walk and go and knock on the neighbours' doors, right? And because she's like, how are we going to find out whether or not, the strata's good or this? And I said, look, you can get the strata report in the contract of sale, but, no one's going to put anything bad in there that's going to incriminate themselves. But if you've got people living there, even if they're tenants, ideally speak to an owner-occupier, then even if they're tenants, they're going to tell you the real story.
We do that with commercial. So call the neighbouring retail tenants.
Correct.
They will tell you all the negatives about that tenant and the relationship, how they get on and what the foot traffic's like, and you actually get a bigger picture of it as well.
So can I ask this?
Actually, I'll take a step back. You told me a really good trick with mentioning auctions.
Yes.
So if you're going to a commercial auction, you told me a trick called cooking the auction.
Cooking the auction.
Do you want to explain that?
I don't know how many more people I want to tell one right now, but I will say it.
I've actually used it. I've been to an auction since and I've used it.
It does work. It does work. And we tried doing it with Kim the other week when she bid on something because, they were quoting 9 to $1 million. And I said, Kim, this is going to go for 1.1, 1.2. Yeah. So I said, what's your budget? She's like $1.05 million. I said, we'll kick it off at $1.03 million. And you could see the guy, someone I think went like 920 and then we just went like $1.03 million and the auction, he just hated me for it. Look, they ended up still selling it. The concept is, right, like, and especially when you're going to an auction, they there's I call it the sanity test, right? Now, the sanity test, and I actually think it's a lot easier to apply sanity over or the fair and reasonable test on commercial real estate because it's generally based on yield, right? Yeah. So if it's an existing tenanted property and there's an ongoing concern, like you can sort of work out.
Geez, you know where it's going to be.
You know where it's going to be. Like you're like these guys.
The human nature. Everyone's got that little thing in their head though, being like, oh, maybe I'll get a bargain.
Maybe I'll get a bargain.
And when I did it at the auction, I literally saw 4 other guys just head on.
Yeah, that's what happened. But you knock them out of the park because the thing is, so where the concept comes with cooking the auction is that if you let other people get emotionally invested in the bidding process, it's where, funnily enough, they end up spending, 200, 300, 400 grand more than what they planned to. So by cooking the auction and you going well above where everyone else is planning on starting, and I even let sometimes people start, let's say they're quoting like, 3 to 3.3 million. And so they bid, 3 million's the opening bid. I go, this thing's got to go for at least 3.3. Yeah. I'll go 3.250. Yeah. And so it's a $250,000 bid. All of a sudden, all these people that thought they might get it for between 3 to 3.3. Now,
but they would have kept going up to 3.3, but now that it's deflated.
And 1 or 2 of them might have even gone above that because they had already started bidding mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically.
And a good auctioneer gets them that.
Correct.
5 more grand, 100%.
Steve. And that's what I do as an auctioneer, right? So like I one thing I was quite famous for, and when I do my auction training that a lot of people, get me to talk them through, is I'm very good at taking like $1,000 or a $5,000 bid, and I do mainly residential, like 99% residential. But I'll take a $5,000 or a $1,000 bid. And then what I'll do is I will use my strong bidder to round me up. So what I'll do is I'll be like, let's go like, you, sir, you go, I'm out. Give me 1,000. Yeah. Give me 1,000. Right. So he might go to 1,311,000 now. So then what I do is I go back to my strong bidder and I go, sir, you got the smile. I'm sure you still got the money. Round me off to 1,320,000.
Yep.
Right. So now I just got $9,000 from this guy.
Yeah.
But then this guy over here, I go, look, you're not going to miss out for $1,000.
Yeah, he's only.
And so he gives me another
yeah.
$1,000. What he doesn't realize is he's actually just gone up 11,000.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like look, at the end of the day, it's an auctioneer's job to get the best possible price for their vendors. So it's not a facetious or a misleading.
What are you getting paid to do? If I'm selling my property, that's exactly what I'm paying you to do.
And it shits me when I see and the other thing a lot of people question me when I call auctions is sometimes I actually reject a bid, and people are like, you and I've had buyers say, you can't do that. And I go, yes, I can. The auctioneer reserves the right to withdraw the property from sale at any point. And I can nominate the price. Yeah. I'm the auctioneer representing my vendor. Right? If my vendor wanted to crack it at me, different story. And people go to me when I finish it, they go, why didn't you take his, the bid was, let's say we're shooting for 1.5 million. Let's say we're at 1.4, and somebody wants to break it down to $1,000 already. Yep. We're too far away.
Yeah.
So there's no point taking a $1,000
bid. Be there
bid.
for half an hour.
Correct, right? And there's no point in taking a $1,000 bid because once you break down the auction, once you go from $25,000 to $10,000 bids to $5,000
then everyone's
to $1,000,
doing that. Yeah.
Then everyone's doing that, right? So and by saying no and go, sir, at this stage, we're not accepting $1,000 bids. I'm happy to come back to you when we are, but at this stage, it's $10,000 in the rise.
Yeah.
And so people go, I've had buyers say, you can't do that. I'm like, yes, I can. Legally, I can. Auctioneeringly, I can. And representing my vendor, I can. Yeah. I said, I'm not here for the buyer. I'm here for my seller. Yeah. And so that's another trick I do. And I do see some auctioneers, and I'm not saying this arrogantly or hubrisly, I do see them make some big blunders. Yeah. Breaking down the auction far too early. If they need to use a vendor bid, starting far too way behind the reserve. Your vendor bid should really be used to really try and get you into the ballpark. Yeah. If you've only got one or two bidders and it's not looking like it's going to be a strong auction, as a good auction.
A lot of people don't know what a vendor bid is.
So in New South Wales, you've got the auctioneer has the right to put a bid in on behalf of the vendor, the owner of the property.
When I first heard about it, I was like, that's a bit weird. Why are they bidding on their own property? But there's a rationale behind it. It's
basically to sort of stimulate it. And it was brought in, how old are you next month?
39 tomorrow.
Tomorrow. It's tomorrow. I was about to say next month. It's tomorrow. So 39 tomorrow. So look, we were probably kids, but you probably weren't around it as much as I was. So I grew up in the Melbourne real estate boom, right? Where everybody was getting done, including some of the top real estate agents that are very respected, but everyone was getting done for dummy bidding. Yeah. Right. So and there was agents that
there's a guy on the news at the moment who's just got done.
He got done recently, and now it's bad. You can't even. So anyway, the moral of the story is that there was an argument made that dummy bidding, and I'm not saying I agree with this argument, but there was some validity to it, right? And I think any good professional in any industry can understand both sides of the story. So there were some big agents that said, look, yes, all right, whether I'm not going to admit that I've pulled bids out of the tree, or my dad came down and did bids at the back of the crowd and wore a different hat at the auction or something like that. I'm like, he goes, the agent made a fair point. He goes, we were never going to the vendor was never going to sell for under, the vendor wants 1.5. I've got a bidder at 1.2, 1.3. The vendor was never going to sell under 1.4. So we're wasting time, at least by me pulling it out of the tree or having my dad come and fluff it up. Yeah. We're getting to the point where it's actually saleable, right? Otherwise, we're wasting everyone's time. So obviously, the ACCC, and back then I was part of the REIV, the Real Estate Institute of Victoria, just went, mate, that is completely illegal, right? So then they go, we need to come up with a strategy, because what they were saying wasn't completely wrong, but we need to make it as transparent as possible. Yeah. So interestingly enough, in Victoria, you can use as many vendor bids as you like, right? And it's silly to use more than max 2, right? Because then your bidder might go, mate, listen, you're taking the piss now. You put in a vendor bid to kick us off at 1.3. You've asked me to come back in at 1.4. I've given you 1.350. Yeah. You're doing another vendor bid now.
It just doesn't feel fair because you're negotiating with the seller.
Correct, right? You might as well pass it in and bring the person in, right? But I've seen agents use 5 or 6 vendor bids. In New South Wales, you can only use one vendor bid. And the vendor needs to agree prior to auction in writing where that vendor bid's going to be, which is a slight hindrance, because what I try and do in a New South Wales auction is suggest the start, right? And this is something that buyers of real estate, both commercial and residential, and if you're a property investor and you're going on the Steve Palise journey, like, the reality is you're in the business of property now. You need to know these sorts of things, right? And so in New South Wales, you can only use one. So I very rarely like to use it right at the start. I do it as an emergency worst case. What I do is I go, and I got a lawyer to sign off on my choice of words here. I say is, can I suggest the start of 1.3 million? Yeah. That's my suggestion, and basically what I do is I keep going down until I get someone to kick it off, and then I use a vendor bid. So at least if I need to, that way it creates competition and got a better chance of getting in the right.
The funny thing is, I used to hate vendor bids. I was like, what is the purpose? Or even dummy bidders. Yeah. But what people don't realize, if you're not at an auction, the sales agent's doing that to you anyway behind closed doors. The amount of times you're bidding against yourself, like, oh, give me another 10 grand. There's another buyer here. There's not. You're bidding against yourself anyway.
Can I say, interestingly enough, one of the biggest lines I use, but it's not just a line, it's actually what I truly believe, is if I'm in the middle of an auction and we're just short, like, the vendor wants 1.5, they've basically said to me, anything over like 1.450, we're on the market. You don't have to even come inside. And we're at like 1.410, right? And I will say to people, listen, let me give you the hot tip. In a minute, I'm about to pass this in to this guy. Now, we are not at the vendor's reserve, so they'll have the first right at the vendor's reserve. But I'll tell you, and I actually pause the auction and tell the story. I go, ladies and gentlemen, last week we ended up having an auction within the auction. It was like Inception. Like the movie was a dream within the dream within the dream. Like, we end up going inside. We put one of you, it's called a Dutch auction. We put one of you in one room at, one bedroom, put another one in the lounge room. And then you got one of us, either myself or one of our team, going from room to room, and you're fighting off against each other, right? Now, the worst part is one of you is going to miss out in there, and you're not going to know whether or not we were telling you the truth or not. And you see, like, it's often the wife's face where she's like, that's kind of true. So, like, if you're going to have a crack, guys, we're just short of what the vendor wants. One of you are going to buy these homes. Like, we're that close to the vendor's reserve. Whoever's coming inside is going to buy it, right? So
why not do an open fair?
Let's do it openly and fairly. Like, it's a great way to buy real estate. It's transparent. It's on the street. You can look at the other person in the eyes. Like, you can legitimately say, okay, I put my best foot forward. And even Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, Mr. Investor, Mr. Commercial Buyer, I'm here to say to you, even if you miss out, at least you'll say, I missed out, but I gave it a solid crack.
It also, banks consider it a fair valuation. Yes. And that's the thing, like, it's people say, oh, you overpaid at auction. I'm like, well, no, you didn't, because you were outbidding someone else who was willing to pay that amount.
Market value, and that's why banks will take an auction valuation.
Right, so, we're going off topic, so back to the assessing the business.
Great. So we had drive growth, which was marketing, sales. I'm glad that you brought us back. So marketing, sales, product to market fit, and service, obviously complementary services. And then we had enable growth. So we've got operations, very, very important, or just what systems have they got in place. We've got financial management. Like, do they have some sort of a forecast? Have they got some sort of a business plan that says this is at least what they're aiming towards? Have they broken it down into monthly budgets? And last but not least is people and culture. And some people go, oh, it's just the mum and dad shop. I'm like, that's fine. But, like, what do they actually, like, when they start employing staff, or let's say they decide, and as a tenant, they might decide to put in a business where they don't want to actually be an owner operator. They would just want to be an owner of the business. And we've been seeing that a lot in the franchising world right now. So you see people that have got money and cash to go open up a Zambrero or a Subway, right? And like, Subway's probably not a good example because Subways just seem to be licensed to print money now, but once upon a time they weren't. But you look at, like, I know some Zambreros franchisees, and Zambreros is a great, great food. but like they're not big like a McDonald's, right? So like you look at that and go, if this person is not going to be an owner operator, and that's the other thing you should ask too, like all right, you're putting in a food shop or a franchise, and everyone always goes, oh, it's a big company, Zambrero, there's 500 stores around Australia. It can't fail.
Yeah.
And I go, well, that's not true. I've seen plenty of franchise businesses fail as well. So is that person going to be an owner operator? If not, that last pillar of that enable growth is people and culture.
Yeah.
Like, who are they going to have in place there? Oh, they're going to put on a full-time store manager. Okay, what's that person's background?
Yeah.
What's their credentials? So I think those 6 elements or drive growth and enable growth pillars, I think are a really good sort of baseline for anyone watching this. So marketing, sales, product, operations, finances, and people. People/culture.
Here's a bit of a story. So about a year ago, I started taking my dog to a dog groomer.
Yes.
Didn't have a website. Their website said coming soon. So you had to physically call up, book in. I'm like, this is a bloody pain in the ass, but it's around the corner from me. So I'm going to start taking them. 6 months later, I'm having a chat every time I drop my dog off once a month. And I was like, why isn't your website up yet? And they're like, oh, we're going to get to it where we just don't have the time to do it. I'm like, well, how's business? Like, oh, not great. We're struggling to pay. Remember, they weren't full. That books 50%. I'm like, why isn't your website? Like literally ChatGPT will make you one. Like just do it. Do an online booking, do it. And guess what? They've closed shop already. Like they just couldn't pay the rent for something as simple as an online booking on the website. So just going to someone's website is really important.
It's heartbreaking. And we're seeing more and more of it. Like obviously, if you want to look at, as from a commercial property investor and a commercial property landlord, right now, food and beverage in particular is massively struggling in Australia, right? Like, you go through Sydney CBD, I think there was a statistic that Clover Moore brought out, the mayor of Sydney. She was saying like 400 cafes / restaurants / bars shut down in like the last quarter. But interestingly enough, 84 opened. But I think the reason why they opened is a lot of these places have gone broke and literally just left the fit out. And the landlord's gone, like, I can relet this and it's fully fitted out. You just got to put a shingle up or put some branding up. But like food and beverage is definitely one I would be very cautious of right now.
Here's another story. So actually 2 doors down from the dog groomers, one of the coffee shops I go to in Freshwater, which is the Northern Beaches, because I keep an eye on that market, I know what they rent for. So the coffee shop I was going to was renting for $200,000 a year, and the main street of Freshwater, it's now closed down. It was a coffee shop. I worked out how many coffees I had to sell each day.
Correct.
And you're like, this is impossible. You guys are going to have to do food or alcohol or something to get people in. You're not going to make $3 a coffee.
No, correct. So that number one. Number two, I think, people that have never been in business that are looking to open a business, I think they underestimate how much of a commitment rent is. So, and that's where even Yellow Brick Road, when we were negotiating leases with landlords, commercial leases for little, not big shop fronts, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 square meter shops, right? Retail. One of the big things that landlords would always give, and we're talking somebody had left NAB, 22 years at NAB, last job they had at NAB, they were on, in private banking, earning, 380 grand a year. And then it was funny, a landlord brought it up with me once, an old Greek landlord out in Hurstville, when we were looking at Hurstville sites, and he said, you giving me this guy's resume that's going to be the tenant, but the problem is he's never owned a business. I said, but he's been at NAB for 22 years and, he earned nearly 400 grand last year. I know, but he's never owned a business. It's very, very different.
It's different. It is different. Very different.
It is different, and like it's, it is sad. It is sad to see. And I think, interestingly enough, a lot of business owners, I know we're slightly going off track from a commercial landlord point of view, but I think a lot of business owners could go and get help, and they don't. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I think it's ego. Sometimes I think they're embarrassed.
A lot of the times it's just a little bit of advice. So my business coach, I basically once every 3-4 weeks, he's like, what are your problems? I tell him my problem. He's like, what are you going to do to fix it? And I say what the solution is. But just having someone force you into that reality of like, I need to do something here. But you touched on food and beverage. Like, the problem with that business is you have huge rent because you need to be in a prime spot. Then you actually have to have the stock, the food. Then you have to have the staff to serve the stock. And then if people don't come in, all three of those are just redundant. So because it's not a service business where like a dog groomer, It's just the space and some clippers and the person. That's it. And that's why I think a lot of them really struggle, because it's like you're either busy or you're not.
Well, the rule of thumb, and I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of sort of food and beverage businesses at the Entourage. I've had a financial interest in some food and beverages businesses over the years, some successfully, some not. So I'm not sitting here saying everything I touch turns to gold. I'm certainly not Midas. I've had challenges with developments I've done. I've had challenges with, I opened up a vegan restaurant in Bondi, and that didn't work out. So like at the end of the day, it'd be naive to think everything's going to work every time. The rough rule of thumb when you're looking at a potential tenant, or if you yourself looking at setting up a food and beverage business, is that you need to really be doing at least 3 times the rent in turnover. So if you're paying 200 grand a year in rent plus outgoing, so let's call it 220, right? And if you're paying 220 in rent, you need to be doing at least 660 to break even, like minus your tax, minus your cost of goods, minus your rent. Your break even is generally about 3 times your rent, right? Like if you're then taking sites, in the, premium sites in like, I'll give you a real life example. I won't breach confidentiality. I've got a particular, client at the Entourage right now who's taking a store in Chadstone Shopping Centre in Melbourne. Now, Chadstone Shopping Centre is, the management group there they're very shrewd negotiators. They're known for being very shrewd. They're giving him 1 month's free rent, which is basically to do your fit out. Number 2, he needs...
Which is nothing. I gave my nail salon 3.
Yeah, there's my point. I told him to ask for 6. They gave him 1, right? So I helped negotiate it with him. They then, in those larger shopping centres, for those of you who don't know, they actually take a percentage of turnover. Right? So I said, okay, they wanted to take a percentage of turnover and they wanted to take a percentage of online sales. So thank God I helped them negotiate backwards and say, look, you're not going to be able to get out of paying 10% of your revenue. Like all the POS systems in the whole of Chadstone are tied into head office. They know exactly what's going on. Number 3, they expect you to do a updated fit out every 3 years at your expense. They had no contribution to fit out because they're like, oh, we're Chadstone Shopping Centre. You need us. So the final straw was, I said, how much is the rent, bro? And it was like 460 grand. And I for like, I don't know, like 120 square meters. But it's in a prime location next to JB.
How much stock do you have to do?
And I go to him, I say, are you aware you're going to need to sell $1.5 million worth of stock to break even, bro? And I said, have you done a forecast? Oh, yeah, I've done a, basic for you. What are you forecasting? Oh, we'll do 2 million next year. I said, can you break it down into a monthly breakdown for me? Because I can't see how you're going to do 2 million in sales. Now, the only positive that, at least that's come off the back of it, we did negotiate that Chadstone Shopping Centre gets none of the online sales.
You could do that, surely you could do that by just registering another business and have it go separately or something like that.
But look, the challenge with the big companies like those big management groups is that they are onto everything. So you're better off being honest with them from the start and negotiating it out rather than them saying you're doing something dodgy.
The premise of them doing a percentage of turnover is basically because they want a good mix of shops. They know the Woolworths, if you've got the little nail salon or the hairdresser, they're not going to do the same revenue as a JB Hi-Fi.
Correct.
So they get a cheaper rent per square meter, which is fair. I get the premise of it, but in reality, like you said, if they've got to do 3 times, you got to do 3 times.
And you got to factor all those things in, right? So that's. So anyway, look, I think going back to the original question, it's like, what should you be looking for in a tenant? I think it's being able to have these conversations, not just with yourself as the landlord or, the owner of the property. And even if you've got an agent who's an intermediary, like I think these days we live in a very modern and evolving world where it's like, listen, I'd like to actually meet the tenant, right? And some people go, I don't want to meet the tenant. Well, some agents will tell you they don't want you to meet the tenant, right? And I'm like, well, kind of, it's my property. I feel like I have a duty of care and I should have the option of at least meeting them for a coffee for 15, 20 minutes and sort of at least eyeing them.
Part of Palise Properties, we actually call the tenant for that. So when you can't do face-to-face, you literally do a Zoom or you have a conversation with them 100%. And you ask your 20 questions. And I've got a few tips from you today about like things to ask about systems and processes, which we don't normally ask about. It's all about like foot traffic, road traffic, how you're affording rent and things like that.
Well, and there's a great point that we've just identified together as good teamwork there, that sometimes we don't think about some of the back end stuff. But like, you can have somebody who's you know, you might come across as a great operator. They might even have some great runs on the board. And then you ask them about having, you know, what systems or what CRM are you using? Or they go, oh, we're not using a CRM, or you know, do you have a database? Like, oh, no, we don't. Like, what have you done with all your past clients? You know, you're moving into this new space. How are you going to let them know that you're open in this location now? Oh, well, we've never done that before. And I'm like, well, kind of, you need to start being more proactive rather than reactive.
We had one, it was a pool centre. We interviewed that tenant and they had 6 pool centres, like sell pumps and pools and all that stuff.
Like a pool works or something.
Yeah, like a pool works. And then I was like, oh, how's business going? It's like, oh, 3 of these aren't profitable. This one hopefully will be profitable. I'm just like, why are you running 6? Like, isn't it time to like fix
consolidate.
one? Yeah, consolidate.
Yeah.
But people just don't know. Like you said, there's more to business than just like open up doors.
And I think sometimes people like, and you know, we were guilty of it. Like, you know, I look at you know, when we've been involved in real estate businesses in Melbourne, like it was all about how many offices you can open.
Yeah.
Like ironically, my brother's now closed a whole bunch of offices and everything's all in one location now, amazingly enough. So like I look at that and I go, you're more efficient, you're more effective, you know, you can get smarter from a marketing point of view. We don't live in a bricks and mortar world anymore either. So like if you're a bricks and mortar business, e.g. like a nail salon, well, you still need somewhere for people to go to. But you got to keep in mind, like, are you in a position or do you have a strategy as the tenant to attract people to your bricks and mortar location? Because the reality is you can't just rely on foot traffic.
That's a perfect segue to the topic I was going to talk about. Yeah. So certain businesses and the longevity of them. So I generally stick away from banks because I haven't walked into a bank unless I'm doing a very, very big
and the banks are shutting them down. They're doing it.
So where do you see like real estate agencies? Because they're massive floor spaces as well. Banks. What else is there? Like anything just with a big floor space that you don't actually go into. Like what's with your brother consolidating? Was that the purpose? As people just aren't going in anymore?
Yeah. So 2 things they did, and this is important from a commercial property investment point of view as well, like some things that you should keep in mind now. Firstly, what they did is they went to level 1 of a beautiful new office building and took a whole floor.
As opposed to the shop front one.
As opposed to the retail shop front, because the reality is people don't walk into a real estate office anymore. Right. Yeah. It's not like they walk in to get back in the day on a Saturday morning, you'd have people come down and pick up the rental list.
You'd also browse the window.
People do not do that anymore. Yeah. They do not. I can tell you that now, mate. So people do not browse the window anymore, right? So we moved everyone onto level 1, right?
I've noticed that in the Northern Beaches, actually. All the real estate is now
moved to level 1, because no one walks in unless you're booked an appointment with a buyer to come and sit with you to put an offer in, or booked an appointment with a vendor to come in for a vendor meeting.
They still don't care about walking upstairs or catching an elevator.
They have to come. They're coming no matter what. They don't need to see your shop front.
The auction I went to last week was on first floor, and there was 100 people on the floor.
Correct. So that's scenario number 1. Number 2 is if you are going to do that, or if you're a landlord of a building and you want to try and get a good tenant, like e.g. like my brother would be a good tenant, you try and find ways through strata, because in case you own the first floor only of a 6-story building, try and see if you can negotiate with strata that your tenant can have branding on level 1. Oh, yeah. So my brother, as you drive down Mount Alexander Road, he's got the whole level 1 wrapped in that, you know, that see-through wrapping, but it says Jealous Craig. It looks like they're actually the whole building. Right? So like obviously a great tenant like a Jealous Craig business down in Melbourne, like they're great businesses. They've got a great reputation. They're not going broke anytime soon, right? So as a landlord, you'd be happy to sign a 5x5x5 with them, tie a tenant up for 20 years because you go, these are good quality people. So if you want to try and attract a great tenant, number 1. Number 2, you want to make sure they're going to be successful. See if you can find some little things that you can give them.
You've just put me on a rabbit hole I'm going to investigate. So I know quite well advertising billboards. So O Media is the one that basically does 80% of Australia. I haven't even thought about like office buildings and wrapping the windows, and that's going to be a rabbit hole I'm going to go into after this.
When we had my dad's service station in Moonee Ponds on the corner of Mount Alexander Road and Askervale Road, that was Caltex Morello Motors. We actually, to maximise, and you know, this could be a tip for your commercial landlords, so to maximise the site, we actually carved off a little corner and it was the end of the tram line for one of the Melbourne trams. So we carved off a little corner on the right-hand side at the back, which it was basically unused area.
Yeah.
So gave the main tenant, when we then rented it out to Albert Chantry Locksmith, gave them a slight discount, was able to rent this little room with a bathroom in there and like a cup of tea for the tram drivers. So Yarra Trams took that little extra space. Yeah. And then the next thing, which we should have done years ago, is we sold 2 billboards on the top, right? And my brother was very good at negotiating that, because part of the deal was when they put the billboards up, they had to give him some free billboard space.
Yeah.
It was a digital screen, so good quality screens, digital screen. It still exists there today. When we sold that property, it added massive strategic value to the property.
Yeah, we actually bought in Canberra, there was a new tram line going in and the whole little street kind of was under construction. Like you couldn't really walk there. There was a vacant retail shop for sale.
Yes.
So we picked it up because we're just like, this is brilliant. No one wanted it though, because they're like, why we want to buy a shop and we can't have a tenant? Yes. I'm like, yeah, but think about in a year when this is done, you are the shop at the waiting station.
Yes.
And that client's already got a 30% uplift with
it.
Because
100%,
of it. You just had to hold the 50 grand holding costs.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be even more, especially up in Queensland, is with the Olympic Games infrastructure and all that going in, and I spoke at a conference at the Dulux conference and the Caravan Association conference last month in Gold Coast, and that
car park would have been a mess turning up to that. There's caravans
everywhere. Correct.
Everyone trying to reverse in.
They're all big drinkers. Everyone from that Caravan Association, mate. No one's driving. They know how to drink. These guys. They were giving out drinks.
They got the bed out the back.
I know. They were giving out drinks at lunch, drinks at dinner, after dinner drinks. Everyone back at the bar, and I was like, but they're all there the next day, 7 a.m. in the morning. Like they were finishing up 2 in the morning. They were back there, and anyway, the Morello of the story is that I was on that Gold Coast highway. Right now, that is an absolute brothel right now. Like, if you were living in the Gold Coast, you'd be ropeable about it. They're trying to put that tram line in and everything. But from a flow point of view, and I was trying to say to some Gold Coast, friends of mine, I've got family up there as well, like you should be buying commercial real estate along this tram line now, because now it's going to become a reason for people to come to, right? Like traditionally, if and you got a lot of people that wouldn't traditionally travel down to let's call it let's say you're in one of the you're in Southport, you wouldn't travel to Miami Beach in the Gold Coast because there's nothing really there and it's hard to get to and you don't want to take a bus. But this tram now, it's busy and it comes every 3 minutes and it's going to really stimulate that Gold Coast corridor. So if you were smart, you would have picked up some of that retail commercial property.
Well, one of my advice I always say on this podcast is I never buy for the capital growth. I buy for future demand. Yes. So I look at a property and go, in 10 years time, is there going to be more demand for this? And having a tram line, there's more people. What the caveat to that is don't buy too early on. If they we're building a tram line in 10 years time, that's too late. It's got to be almost kind of complete.
And can I tell you another just little tip for everyone to keep in mind too? A good friend of mine. Have you met Michael Vasquez before? No. So Michael's a great guy.
I've seen him on your socials.
Yeah, great guy. On and off entourage member for the last 10 years. But he's come to support my charity in Cambodia. He's travelled around the world with me. So we went to Vegas together. He, funnily enough, had he's made his money in solar. It's where he's actually made his money. But he decided that he was going to open up a cafe because he's Spanish, born in Spain originally. He was going to open up a sort of a Spanish cafe style bar, tapas sort of thing in the Gold Coast. And what he didn't take into consideration, so he was the tenant, keep in mind, but what he didn't take into consideration was the construction period. So while they were actually putting in the tram line, he shot the gun a little bit too early. Yeah. That basically nobody could even access his shop. Yeah. And they had drilling and machinery going off.
Yeah, no one's going there for a relaxing drink.
They were not, right? Yeah. And so how long can a business survive? Yeah. Can you handle?
We just spoke about food and beverage.
I know. Can you go 6 months while there's construction, 6 to 12 months while there's construction, because you're basically burning cash.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that actually kind of flows in what I was going to ask as well. So the things I always get asked about literally every day, future of office space, petrol stations, which is a good one for you because your dad's businesses, and then childcare centres.
Yes.
So where do you see offices? Because Entourage obviously rent a whole floor in the city.
Yep.
Do you see opportunities there, or what's some things you look at for that, or is it still too early?
I think there's definitely a glut in the CBDs of offices, right? So you look at the building we're in the Rabobank building in the Darling Park development. You got to keep in mind, like Salesforce had 10 floors in there. They've disappeared. So like, let's pretend.
That surely was an opportunity though for good rental negotiations.
Great net rental negotiations, right? And like we had a shrewd negotiator, our old CEO, Tim Morris. He's very much a shrewd negotiator. So he negotiated a really, really good deal for us. But even now, that Darling Park, which is a AAA site when it comes to office space in the CBD, and you've been to our office 1,000 times, like 180-degree views of the harbour. Like it's probably one of the best views for an office in Australia, let's call it, right? And so one of the things that breaks my heart is that the vibe has left that building, right? Like, the only thing that's probably making money right now is Guzman and Gomez. Like the line's out the door every day. But the little cafes, they're struggling. Yeah. There was a dry cleaner, which is gone. I have to walk 2 kilometres to another dry cleaner now to get my suits done. There was a physio that ended up getting shut up shop. There was another great little Asian food restaurant that's had to close down because if there isn't a tenancies in there. So 2 things on office space. One, it needs to be more than just office space. So like the reason why we got and spent the money we've spent is we use our space also as venue space, right? Which you've come to a few of the events this. We use it for client acquisition. So you could even argue, like when you walk into our office and you see 180-degree views of the harbour, you could actually argue a portion of that rent is part of our marketing, right? So like that's the way to offset it. Would I be going to buy office space as an investment right now? Probably not.
I'm in agreement. I think we're too early on. We were talking about those 10-year horizon.
I think there's a glut right now, and so like there's an argument in Victoria right now. I don't know if it's just some crazy politician's idea or if there's some validity to it around they're looking because of the housing shortages. They're looking at doing like taking office buildings. The government are looking at taking office buildings and converting it into like NRAS, National Rental Assistance Schemes properties for like teachers and public service workers. And so they're going like, we've got all these empty office buildings in the CBD. Everybody wants to live in the epicenter. Can we? So that is something that's happening right now. To your next question, service stations. They are a great, as somebody who grew up in service stations, I still can't understand how Shell and BP, like Shell just bought the OTR group out of South Australia, the Shaheeds. Yeah. So they're who we sold one of our sites to. They bought our site at a premium. My dad liked selling to them that property because they were also a BP family. Within 4 months of them spending, I reckon, $800,000 retrofitting that, if not more, probably $1 million retrofitting with all new BP signs and giving it all a juice and a clean up. And they put a car wash in there as well. It's more than $1 million. You probably spent $2-3 million. They ended up selling the whole kit and caboodle, lock, stock, and barrels to Shell for $1.3 billion. So Shell gave them $1 billion cash and 300 in Shell shares, whatever the parent company of Shell's called. So I look at that and go, shit. Like it's supposed to be, we're supposed to be moving to electric cars and all this sort of jazz. Service stations to this day still for some reason continue to open, and I believe it's because the model needs to be a bit different. So interestingly enough, Lucy and I actually just went to a service station then. On the one site, whoever owns this site has done a very smart move. He's got a Thai restaurant as a tenant. In the same that part of that side of the side, he's also got a pancakes
on a North Parramatta. That's where he went. Yep.
And I looked at the end, then they've got McDonald's as a tenant. Then they've got the Shell. So like I look at that and go, okay, if you're going to own a service station or own the land,
Bunnings is behind it next door as well.
But you need to be leveraging, and it needs to be its highest and best use, right? Yeah. Like if you want to, if you got someone who's going to come in there and just be a traditional service station operator, there is no money in fuel anymore. You're making on average 3 cents a litre. Once upon a time,
is that all they make? 3 cents a litre.
3 cents a litre. The excise keeps going up every year. That's why our petrol is so expensive. It's all taxes. It's actually not the petrol companies. Everyone goes, oh, it's the petrol companies. It's the taxes, Australian taxes, because we are trying to encourage people to be more environmentally friendly, right? So just on that, is there a future and are they good investments? service station? Yes, they are, but I would only be buying a service station if there was opportunity to increase strategically its potential value, right? And so like you see now, there's no point having a straightforward, service station operator like Shell just did a big sell-off, a Burgess Rawson in-house auction nationally at Crown Casino Melbourne, right? My brother went to it. And funnily enough, my dad's place that he had in 1971 was on the chopping block, right? So Shell was trying to offload the physical site, right? So they've just signed a 50-year lease. So to sell it and to get a premium for the site, Shell backed themselves that much. They've signed a 50-year lease.
They know the numbers as well. And this is probably where we keep using the word like time horizons. They probably know there's 30 years left in it. The land component's valuable enough as well, because petrol stations are typically on intersections, corner blocks, main highways. So it's a bit of almost like a McDonald's play. It's like you're getting the land part as well.
Correct. So and then the last part of that as well, I had someone interested in a site, a Melbourne family that rang me for advice and my brother for advice, because when you petrol stations, they're in food and beverage quite successfully. So they've got cash and they wanted to park some cash, right? And so they looked at a service station site that was on a 5 year by 5 year by 5 year, but it was an independent operator. So I said, that's kind of a red flag. Like I said, if it's like Shell running it, head office, different story.
You can draw a linear line and you can work out, okay, I'm going to be all right for this extended period.
Correct. But the other thing I also said to him as well is this needs to be an investment that sits in, I call it generational wealth investment. Like the son who called me is my age. His parents are still alive. He's now got 3 kids. His sister's got 2 kids. The other sister's about to start having kids. I'm like, if you're buying a service station, this thing's going to be, it's a set and forget, right? If you're going to get, the tenant's going to be in there, you're land banking that for the next 30 years, and that's the way you go about it, right? And then hopefully at the end of that 30 years, the tenant, gets lost. You do a decontamination, which there's a whole bunch of great pieces of technology now that you can do it a lot cheaper than it used to be. Like one of my dad's sites, we got quoted like 800 grand to decontaminate and to pull the tanks out. Now they can actually, what they do is they drill into the ground and they pump like a particular chemical that neutralizes the dirt. It's amazing the technology they got now. So the future development opportunity is what you're buying it for. The last one that we mentioned before was childcare centres. I think childcare centres, there's always going to be a great market for. I know we're going through a difficult period in Australia right now with childcare centres, obviously with certain scandals and terrible things that have happened. But I don't think people are going to stop sending their kids to childcare because they need to, number one.
People aren't going to have a more relaxing life moving forward where they work less hours. It works ideally, but in reality, we're going to work harder for our money and we're going to need help. And that's going to
100%.
My issue with childcare, as I've mentioned this in other podcasts, is the one-dimensionality of them. Like you buy it, if your tenant suffers and closes up shop, you've got a very purpose-built.
It's very purpose-built.
That you can't do anything with.
Very purpose-built.
You're throwing millions of dollars to convert it into something else. So probably assessing the business is the most important one of that one.
And it's a very good point you make on that, because from a childcare point of view, like I know we've had to sell some where the tenant's gone bankrupt and not been able to weren't sustainable. Landlords then had to hold the part of the pun left holding the baby. Part of the pun there, holding the baby, and then they've had to sort of urgently sell, and then they've come back to us, and we've had to then auction.
They're funnily enough, like they're not as profitable as people think. Like people always whinge, like, I can't believe I've got to pay $160 to send my kid for the day. There's only allowed 1 carer per 4 kids. So they're making like $700.
No,
that's take off the salary of the carer for $250, $300. It's a few $100 per 4 kids. It's not like this hugely profitable enterprise.
Very true. It's correct. So. Where there's good money, and I've got some, Lebanese family friends out in Western Sydney that they've gone and built their own childcare centre. So what they do then is they own the entity and they're renting it back to themselves, right? And so it seems the numbers seem to work a little bit better doing it like that. And then obviously, you've got to really make sure, like from a tenancy point of view, that they actually know what they're doing. Like, are they attracting new
it might be the same person. So I know someone in a similar position, they build it and then revalue it with themselves on a 20-year lease, and they're making their margin from the building of it.
Correct.
Then the land bank, and then the childcare is just to keep the lights on. And
correct, exactly.
And then they could still sell it later on.
I think we're probably talking about the same people.
I think we are.
We are. Okay, there we go.
All right, the last one I want to get touch on is I always get asked about this as well. Self-managed super funds.
Yes.
You're probably better answering this from a business point of view. So a lot of commercial investors are business owners as well, and they start going, do I buy a premise in my self-managed super fund for my business?
100%. Like I think if you're in and obviously this isn't financial advice, I just want to make it clear. If you are in a position to set up a self-managed super fund, so a couple of little quick tips on an SMSF in general, even before we get into the property side of things. Number one, keeping in mind, you do have an element of responsibility there, right? And fiduciary responsibility for yourself to manage your super. Number two, you do need to get it audited every year. So there is a cost to doing that too. Some people were like, oh, I don't want to give the superannuation companies my money anymore. Number three, don't think you can do any dodgies anymore. So like people were buying holiday houses and renting it out back to themselves. It is completely against the law. And if you get caught, you will, if not go to jail, you'll get into a lot of trouble. I'm sure if you did it a second or a third time, you'd go to jail because they're trying to make a point of it, because a lot of old Italians were doing it. It was, they got busted down at Dramana and Phillip Island, everything. And I know people got busted doing it. And don't rent it to your kids or your in-laws, your daughter's husband's family, like it's a different surname. The tax department won't work it out. They will work it out. So don't even do it dodgy. The last part is, if you are a business owner and you're in a financial position to buy the building in a self-managed super fund and rent it back to yourself, it is great and once again, I'm not a financial planner, so this is Andrew Morello's personal opinion and it's advice that I give myself, is that it's a great opportunity, obviously, to make massive tax savings. So, you're paying a much less tax threshold, number one. Number two, it's not, I hate saying this, rent money is dead money, but like you are literally paying off an asset. Yeah. Number three, if you said to me the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, the only threat that people always ask me, they go, it sounds too good to be true. I said, well, generally, if you're in business with somebody, you might buy it, you might set up a self-managed super fund, or you might set up an entity where you buy it together, right? Or, that's generally what happens. So the only time I've seen it become a bit of a disaster is where the business partners haven't had a conversation about what happens if the business doesn't work. And I go, well, look, how you alleviate that is you have all the difficult conversations up front. Things like, if the business didn't work out, how does one person buy out the other person? You can have a thing, and so it might be just you get an independent valuation, I get an independent valuation, and I buy you out, or we buy each other out, right? Number one. Number two, or we have the first and last right. So I might have somebody who will buy my 50% of it, but you have the first and last right as the other tenant in common. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is is what we call like buy-sell agreements, and also key man insurance around like the other thing you don't want to do as well in a lot of the scenario, and this is not a misogynistic thing, I'm just using some real life examples in my head and I won't mention names here, but like let's say you and I were in business and then I'm touch wood. Is this wood? That's wood underneath, great. So I'm touching wood when I say this, but then you go and die. Yeah. I don't want to inherit your wife and children as that I've got to be in business with, right? I'm one in business, two, I want to be in a position where I can either we insure each other, and the insurance basically is in the event that one of us passes away, there will be a lump sum payment to pay your wife, so that way you're not inheriting them as a
business partner,
or property ownership partner.
Yeah, okay, that's really good. One of the caveats I always give to that is the quality of the investment still has to stand. A lot of people will still go, "Oh, I'll get this little pokey 20 square meter office at the back of a building." if you wouldn't buy it as an investment property, it's probably not the right
Correct.
one.
Very good advice.
And then flowing onto that is it adds another layer of risk if business is struggling,
Yes.
because all of a sudden you've got a property mortgage and business to worry about. Lease, if you're renting and you're on a 3x3x3 and there's 18 months left on the lease, you just got to survive that period. Then you've got the optionality to find another spot.
100%.
So it's marrying up. So warehouses it's a pretty easy one.
Yep.
Office ones I'm still not against because there's opportunity costs. You can pick up a bargain as well. But again, try to get second floor, street front, something with good fundamentals.
So my brother and his couple of business partners, they've bought their floor. Yeah. So they own the floor in their building. They don't own the building, but they own their floor. They've also bought the house behind. So they already have anticipated they're going to outgrow that office one day. Number one. Number two, the house behind came up. So as business partners, they basically sat down and said, we're already in for a penny and for a pound in a structure. And we bought this. Let's buy the house directly behind. It's a potential car park for staff. It's a potential training room, potential whatever it might need to be. Okay. So like I think once you get the formula right, like as I said, my brother's office, where the office is not a desk that, like, he doesn't get foot traffic there. Yeah. Even though Trent Cochin, who's the ex-captain of Richmond Football Club, owns the Fit Pilates CrossFit studio downstairs. So that is a big attraction point. But the reality is, like, people don't go to a real estate office unless they need to anymore.
That's right. But he's still got the So we still buy office, but we try to generally focus on like the suburban office. Where the little 2-story ones, we bought one that it was an office building, but the second floor was a ballet studio. So it's not really an office. It's actually retail. But I think that's an awesome way to end it, man. We've been going for an hour and a half, so
I feel like we could go for another 3 hours.
I literally said before this started, I just have to ask one question and we're going to be all right to go.
I know, but look, it's always enjoyable. Obviously, if anyone ever wants to, get in touch with me,
I was going to say, give a bit of a plug of Entourage.
So they obviously, if they want to reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn, or they can email me direct, morello@the-entourage.com. If you go through the Entourage website, if you're a business owner and you're keen to have a chat about sort of helping your business go from 6 figures to 7 to 8 and beyond, reach out, ask for me. There's a 1300 number I think you can call on the website. Otherwise, put an email inquiry in and say, can I have a chat with Morello? And either myself or my team will get in touch.
You're very giving me your time anyway, so if they ask for you, they'll get you on the phone and just get some advice.
Yeah, perfect.
This has been brilliant, mate. Thank you so
much. Thanks, mate. Great to have you.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.